For Hype Plus News, I'm Symphony Thompson. We know the names and faces of many Black revolutionaries like Fred Hampton and Malcolm X, but how much of their stories do we really know? We learn about the nation's most notable Black leaders in school and in the media, but even the things you can learn can be misconstrued depending on the source. A perfect example of this is many false details about Martin Luther King Jr. portrayed in the media by way of the FBI. Another radical leader who shares the experience of having their narrative be told by the government is activist and author Assata Shakur. Some may know her as a member of the Black Liberation Army. Some may recognize the name as the late rapper Tupac Shakur's godmother. But if you were to look up Assata Shakur on the internet, you might find that she's a bank robber, a kidnapper, and a murderer. According to Shakur, through interviews in her autobiography Assata, that is not at all her story. It is true that she has been a political activist since the 1960s, has worked alongside many famous revolutionaries like Huey P. Newton and Angela Davis. The meaning of her chosen name, Assata Alukbala, reflects her life and legacy. She who struggles for the people. Her life has been dedicated to the collective struggle for Black liberation. So how did Assata go from activist to FBI's most wanted? This is what you didn't know about Assata Shakur. There is no evidence of the birth of Assata Shakur, at least none that can be confirmed by the FBI. The wanted poster released by the Federal Bureau of Investigation lists Shakur's birthday as July 16, 1947, but in parentheses it states, not substantiated by birth records. The FBI also notes that Shakur used August 19, 1952 as her birthday. However, she was born as Joanne Deborah Bryan, what she calls her slave name, in Jamaica, Queens, New York, where she grew up moving back and forth between her mom, aunt, and grandparents in Wilmington, North Carolina. Growing up in the Jim Crow era, Shakur's grandparents, Lola and Frank Hill, who owned a local dance hall, instilled in her a sense of dignity, especially regards to white people. They would tell her things like, "You're as good as anyone else. Don't let anyone tell you that they're better than you." And when it came to white people, she was forbidden from calling them ma'am or sir, looking down while speaking to them, or any other subservient gestures. In her autobiography, she writes, "I was told to hold my head up high or risk having my grandparents knock it off my shoulders." Although Shakur experienced racism earlier in life, she wouldn't begin to radicalize into her late teen years. At 17 years old, Shakur dropped out of school and moved out on her own. She lived with strangers for a while until her aunt Evelyn, who later became her lawyer, took her in and helped her get her GED. She would go on to attend Bureau of Manhattan Community College and later City College of New York. She made friends with many of the African students on campus. Then one day in 1964, a discussion on the roots of the Vietnam War changed her life. I never forgot that day. We're taught at such an early age to be against communists, yet most of us don't have the faintest idea what communism is. Only a fool lets somebody else tell him who his enemy is. She became active in different organizations like the Garveyites in the Republic of New Africa. And in the late 1960s, Assata would join one of the most prominent political organizations, the Black Panther Party. Though brief, her time with the Black Panthers would mark a life-changing turn of events in her political career. She had always revered the message of the Black Panther Party, especially because they made it really clear who the enemy was. Not the white people, but the capitalistic, imperialistic oppressors. Shakur has said that the party not being open to criticism led to her exit from the organization. In her autobiography, she writes, "Constructive criticism and self-criticism are extremely important for any revolutionary organization. Without them, people tend to drown in their own mistakes, not learning from them." Government infiltration, namely COINTELPRO, among other factors, led to the demise of the Black Panther Party, but not before its most prominent members had turned against each other, been killed, falsely imprisoned, or demonetized in the media. These events gave way to the Black Liberation Army, a group that the FBI named Shakur the heart of. BLA members operated under the belief that only through covert means, including but not limited to violent acts, could the movement be continued. This underground Black Party spinoff built its tactics around revolutionary violence with the goal to take up arms for the liberation of Black people in the United States. Acting as her own co-counsel in a 1976 trial for murder, Assata claimed in her opening statement, "The Black Liberation Army is not an organization. It goes beyond that. It is a concept, a people's movement, an idea. The idea of a Black Liberation Army emerged from conditions in Black communities, conditions of poverty, indecent housing, massive unemployment, poor medical care, and inferior education. She continued, the concept of the BLA arose because of its political, social, and economic oppression of Black people in this country. And where there is oppression, there will be resistance. From 1971 to 1973, Shakur was alleged to have committed a series of heinous crimes: 2 bank robberies in New York, the kidnap of a drug dealer, armed robbery, and the attempted murder of a policeman in an ambush. In 1972, the FBI issued a warrant for her arrest in connection with these crimes allegedly committed by the BLA. It was clear that the Black Liberation Army was a target for the FBI, local police agencies, and they were being pinned with every violent crime in the area. Assata would later either be acquitted for every charge or the case was dismissed. Then came the events of May 2nd, 1973, the fatal Jersey Turnpike shootout. There are different accounts of what happened that night, but what we do know is that Assata and her political associates, Zaid Malik Shakur and Sindada Akoli, were stopped by State Trooper James Harper, backed up by Trooper Weiner Forster for driving with a broken taillight. Shots were fired and Zaid Shakur and Weiner Forster were killed. After fleeing the scene, Assata, wounded with 2 gunshots to the arm and the back, surrendered to the police, and Akoli was captured after a 36-hour manhunt. Only the survivors know what really happened that night, and Assata refuses to share details even to this day. But in 1977, upon being found guilty, Assata maintains that the jury convicted a woman with her hands up. The trial was considered by many to be a miscarriage of justice, beginning with the jury selection. Transcripts show that at least 2 of the juries expressed prejudice before the start of the trial. 5 out of the 15 jurors selected, all white, were close friends or relatives to New Jersey state troopers. A major key in Assata's defense was medical testimony proving that during the confrontation, she was shot with her hands up, sustaining paralyzing wounds that would make her unable to fire a weapon in the manner that Trooper Harper had testified. Harper's testimony conflicted throughout the trial, and he testified to lying in his official report on the incident as well as in his grand jury testimony. And though there were no forensic evidence proving that Assata ever touched a gun that night, the jury found her guilty on all 8 counts. She was sentenced to life plus 30 years. Shakur spent years in jail before her conviction under conditions that most would consider to be deplorable. In her autobiography, she tells of being embarrassed and even tortured by police in the hospital after the incident. She was chained to her hospital bed and interrogated while gravely injured. She was even held in an all-male prison in solitary confinement for over 20 months and under 24-hour surveillance. She was beaten and given less than adequate medical care, even when she became pregnant with her only daughter, Kakuya. When the prison first found out she was pregnant, a doctor not only lied about her diagnosis multiple times, but he also refused to provide Shakur with any support besides an abortion. So in 1979, Assata Shakur had decided that it was time to go. On November 2nd, she escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility for Women. It is said that a group of members of the Black Liberation Army helped Shakur escape by posing as visitors to the prison. Holding 2 correctional officers hostage at gunpoint, they stole a prison van to get off the facility grounds, leaving the hostages in the parking lot before switching cars and fleeing the scene. Shakur refuses to go into detail about her escape in solitary with those incarcerated due to their involvement. After breaking out of prison, Assata went on the run and remained underground for 5 years until fleeing to Cuba and receiving political asylum in 1984. To this day, Shakur remains in Cuba with the FBI classifying her as a domestic terrorist since May 2nd, 2005. In 2013, on the 40th anniversary of Trooper Forster's death, Shakur became the first woman added to the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. They placed a $2 million bounty on the activist. In 1998, Shakur told Source magazine, "The US government tried to eliminate me, but I'm not a criminal like they want you to believe, or a gangster. The FBI has a way of leaking all kinds of stories about me to the press, the same way they've always tried to criminalize the Black liberation movement. Because of this, we as a people have to be really clear about who we are and what we stand for. Even today, we see the media misconstrue the facts in many cases of social injustice, but with the emergence of social media, we're able to see the truth play out in real time." Robert Doyle, a lawyer connected to the BLA, is quoted in the book Days of Rage as saying, "Assata was never this massively important figure the police portrayed her as. She was important, but the police made up this mythic image of a super Black woman with an afro and a machine gun. She was never that." When asked if she would ever return to the United States, Assata told Essence magazine in 1997, "I don't know. I think it will be hard. It's funny, people ask me if I miss the States. I miss African Americans. I miss our culture, our speech, dance, and cooking, but not the US government and all the things that they put me through. I miss my friends and family. When I ask how things are in the States, they don't give me the okie dokie. They say, honey, things are hard. It reminds me I have to keep struggling." And at the age of 75 years old, Assata Shakur remains in Cuba. Stay up to date with the latest news by subscribing here to our YouTube channel, follow Hype Plus across all social media, and look out for new original content on a new streaming service. For Hype Plus News, I'm Symphony Thompson.